Hey fellow mobs, Moby here. Welcome back to Armored Legends. In this series, we interview some of the best players in the world and have them share their strategies, build, and tech. This and the next episode will feature two of some of the most storied tournament challengers who have dominated the competitive scene with an unmatched consistency. I have here with me Andromida, the master of an incredibly aggressive style known as the quad shotgun.
Hi, I'm Andromida, and I make music for a living. The only Armored Core that I have any real experience with is Armored Core 2. When I'm back on the PS2, I played the shit out of Armored Core 2 back on the PS2. I didn't expect to be super high level. I've only ever been competitive in one other game, and that was Doom Eternal. Yeah, I've never been like the one to be super competitive in like games in general. Mostly because I actually have vision issues, so it's hard for me to like be super competitive in like first-person shooters and stuff. But with the way Doom Eternal worked, you kind of had like outlines on your enemies and stuff, so you'd be able to see them pretty easily for the most part. And then with Armored Core, it's kind of similar. You know, you've got the lock system, and they're kind of always highlighted, and you know, hard lock is a thing. So it's one of those games that just for me, I can actually kind of play without fighting my visual impairment. The reason why it's so potent is quad shotties, when played well, it can stagger really quickly, and it's got multiple combos that you can do on the stagger punish itself.
Build breakdown.
My Armored Core is the Ephemera, head and arms, and then Mind Alpha, core and legs. And it's mainly because these parts are all pretty defense heavy for the weight that they are. They're all pretty good at energy defense too, which I think is pretty important when it comes to quad shotty, because you're going to be fighting stuff like laser tanks and LRB shield, things like that. So you definitely want to have enough energy defense to be able to actually fight those things. It's the reason why lightweight quad shotty doesn't really work all that well in competitive plays, because of the fact that lasers exist, and you definitely need good energy defense to live through some of that stuff. And then for the booster, I'm using Burzel. You can kind of mess around with what booster you put in here. I like the Burzel specifically because the quick boost duration is actually the shortest one in the game, I believe, so it's like really snappy, which I think for circle boosting and for just lining up certain shots and angles, I think it's the best booster personally for the quad shotgun style. I don't really feel like my build really changed at all after the Burzel nerf. And then for the FCS, you know, good old Acellus, it's 4 shotguns. The only thing you're going to be wanting is close range. Pulse armor, you can use it either very aggressively, or you can, you know, make some pretty good comebacks with it because of how potent the quad shotty stagger combos are. I've taken games back where I was super low AP and the other person had a good amount of AP left, and they just got staggered again and got nuked. Generator is Sentai, and the reason why you want Sentai is the capacity and the fast regen. With all the parts combined, the build has a little above like 4k supply efficiency, so you're going to be recharging pretty fast when you're on the ground, and that's going to allow you to make some pretty aggressive plays with your energy, given you know how to manage your energy correctly. Obviously, you're going to be in assault boost a whole lot, so you're definitely going to want that recharge to come back as quick as possible. Around 4k efficiency is more than enough. You can kind of mess around with the weapon loadouts you're in, but in my opinion, Haldeman's are kind of required for quad shotgun, because quad shotgun wants good uptime. The Haldeman's, their reload time just allows you to have the uptime that you need to be aggressive and to build stagger consistently at a good rate. And for me, I think Zimmies obviously are just going to be the best shotguns to pair with the Haldeman's. You can definitely make Sweet 16 Haldeman work, and it's what I used to run for the longest while. Zims just have the range control, and the uptime of Zims is going to be quicker than the uptime of Sweet 16, so the Zim Haldeman combo is just synergizes so well, in my opinion. With the uptime of both of the shotguns, that allows you to do the really disgusting combos like Zim into Haldeman kick, Zim Haldeman. You can do other combos like if you stagger with the kick, you can extend with the Zims, do the Haldemans, and then the kick, and then Zim Haldeman again. Zims is definitely the best pairing with the Haldemans when it comes to quad shotgun.
Matchup strategy.
When it comes to like the strategies behind the quad shotgun build, I would say the most basic concept of it is you're going to be relying on your assault boost. It's just basically your form of offense and your form of defense. You get the 30% impact buff and 30% impact reduction on yourself, right? The concept is you want to try to be an assault boost for a good majority of the game. The amount of time that you're in assault boost and when you choose to assault boost is very matchup dependent. So like if you're fighting like a tank in like ranks, for the most part, assault boosting pretty much the entire game is kind of what you want to go for. If you're fighting up against a tank who knows how to play the game better, you have to try to bait out the tank kicks. That's like a big thing because tank kicks are going to stop your momentum, and quad shotgun is, I would say, it's very momentum based. If you get taken out of like your rhythm, you can get punished pretty hard. Quad shotgun is also a lot about positioning and making sure you're in the right spot to capitalize on staggers. You want to be close enough that you can get that stagger extend. You don't want to be under someone because then you can't follow up with a kick. So positioning yourself correctly for the staggers is super important for quad shotgun. It's just one of those things that it can cost you the game if you don't do that right. When you're fighting up against certain lightweight matchups, the best way I find to fight CQC lightweight, you're gonna go in and assault boost in. Whenever you get close to them, usually CQC lightweights are gonna try to dash around behind you. They're gonna try to juke your shotguns with movement. Ideally, what you want to do is when you get close to them, you want to anticipate where they're gonna dash and then quick boost out of assault boost in whatever direction you think they're gonna go. So you're basically following them in the dash with them, so that when you're both done coming out of that quick boost, they eat 2 shotguns to the face. It's almost like a guaranteed. The other thing that you can sort of mess with fighting lightweights is staggering your shots. You know, they're going to try to dodge one zim and then you can fire the other zim as they're coming out of the other quick boost. You also can then switch to your Haldeman's. So it's a lot of pressure on lightweights fighting the quad shotgun build. So typically, if I'm going to do that, I only ever do it with the zims. I don't really do it with the Haldeman's. The other matchup that you really want to get good at with this build is fighting rats. Not even just lame rats, but just like rats in general. Because, you know, you don't have missiles, right? So the easiest way that I found to do that is to usually purge the Haldeman's. You know, purging 2 guns is going to weigh less. You're going to be way more energy efficient. You're just going to be faster, and it's going to be a lot easier to catch up to the missile rats. Because missile rats are going to be usually running only missiles for the most part, unless they're like a lamb, then they'll sometimes, you know, have the whip. But you don't really need all 4 shotguns. What you really need is just the ability to catch him. Because once you're able to catch the rat, then especially if you can get them in like a kick cycle with the zims, they'll fold pretty hard. For shield builds, like, you know, a Zim shield, a good strategy to use is kind of what I mentioned before with the lightweights, you know, staggering your Zim shots. So the idea is you're applying pressure to the shield, right? They can only shield so much. It has to go on cooldown eventually, or they're going to have to choose some shots to not parry. The other good strat that you can do is to bait out a parry and then follow it up with a double Zim shot for some huge staggers. So the idea is you get in close and go into shoot, but then cancel it out with a assault boost strafe. Because you can cancel your shotguns if you assault boost strafe right after they come up. You can bait out a parry like that and then follow it up with another Zim shot. Really, it's really dependent on the player, honestly, whether you're gonna stagger your shots or not. If they're like a better player, you're probably gonna have to do the staggering shots more often. If they're not pairing well and you kind of notice that, then you can go in and just do your normal swaps like normal. You don't really have to stagger your shots all that much. The strategy behind fighting a vertical kite is you're basically going to want to make reads on them whenever they just decide to dash behind you. Because vertical kites, whenever you get close, they're going to try to dash behind you to get you to whip around with your assault boost and waste more energy. But you can actually punish that by anticipating when they're going to do that and canceling your assault boost and then reinitiating as soon as they're dashing. And you'll just be on top of them the entire game. They won't be able to really do anything about it. Fighting like a dual melee player, it can be a little tricky if they're good. The idea is you want to make their first blade whiff. Usually you accomplish that by staying in assault boost for a long period of time in the first engagement. So let's say like it's a build like the one that Thermidor runs where he's got Coral Blade and the Pulse Blade, right? The idea is assuming that he's not trying to do the charge attack first. So let's say you're able to get in without him doing the charge attack. What you want to do is you want to try to stay in assault boost so that duration of him trying to hit that first swing of the Coral Blade. You want to try to get him to miss that because he then won't really be able to stagger you with just one Zim and a hit of the Pulse Blade, right? Unless he lands a charged Pulse Blade, then that's another story. Avoiding that first blade is kind of the key to fighting those kind of double melee setups. If you notice that they're starting the rounds by doing the Coral Oscillator charge, the big sweep, what I like to do is actually go up like a really high into the air and try to approach in that way. It makes it a bit harder for them to land that Coral Oscillator and lets you get in close without taking a whole bunch of damage. There's certain tank pulls that are a tough matchup, and that's usually the laser tanks with like the, you know, the missiles, the HMLs. But if you're fighting like a tank that has a Nebula, for example, like if you're fighting a dual Nebula Aurora tank, these tanks, you can hard punish these tanks like crazy. The idea is you want to try to get them into kick cycles, unless they have a bazooka or something. They don't really have something to immediately put you into stagger like the way laser tanks can. But these sort of Nebula Aurora tanks, they can't really do that. So you can spam kicks on them and not let them move.
Combos and tech.
When it comes to the combos that you do, the most potent one is like really, really disgusting. You stagger with the Zim, extend with the Haldeman's, kick into Zims again, and then Haldeman's again. And if you start the game with less than 10k AP, if you don't pulse armor that first stagger, you're dead. But sometimes in the heat of the moment, you're not able to do the most potent combos. You're left with some of the other options, which are still strong. You know, you can stagger with the Haldeman's, extend with the Zims, kick into Haldeman. You know, that's a decent one. That's still going to do a lot of damage. You can stagger with Haldeman's kick into Haldeman again. That's another pretty decent one. I would say probably the least effective one is staggering with whatever shotgun and then kicking. Whenever you immediately kick after you stagger, if you don't do any stagger extend, they're just going to go flying forward, and that's going to mess up the range, so you won't get as much damage out of whatever shotgun is following up. Although sometimes that can be a good strategy to just get some distance on somebody. Let's say you're fighting a tank and you get the stagger and you're almost staggered, so what you can do is just sort of kick them away and then back off to reset your stagger. If I stagger with the Zims and then immediately follow with the kick, they're going to go flying forward. If I stagger with the Zims and then extend with the Haldemans and then kick, they're not going to go flying forward because you extended first. When it comes to your pulse armor usage, like I said before, it's one of those things that you either want to use very aggressively or you want to try your best to save it for a big comeback. So I find that if you get a good lead on somebody, an AP lead on somebody, so let's say you get first stagger and you're able to do the full punish, I will usually just straight up immediately after just pop my pulse armor and be super aggressive with it and just give myself an even bigger AP lead. And usually they're going to try to wait for your pulse armor to run out so that they can pop theirs. But the idea is that you're already on top of them when you pop your pulse armor. In that time period, you don't really have to assault this all that much, so you're going to be full on energy when they pop theirs. And because you're on Burzle, for the most part, you're going to outrun everybody that tries to catch up to you at that point. So you basically got all the value out of your pulse armor and then denied all the value from theirs. And then at that point, the game's just kind of unwinnable for them. Let's say you get staggered first. Depending on what the weapon loadout is, if you think that you can tank or punish, then I would say do so and try to save that pulse armor for a big comeback, because with quad shotgun, you can make some disgusting comebacks because of combos. That's kind of the whole goal with these stagger extends, is you're trying to force so much of a lead that the other player just won't be able to come back from it. As far as tech and movement techniques, circle boosting is the bread and butter for the quad shotgun build. Circle boosting is basically hard locked on your opponent, and your assault boosting and your assault boosting strafing in one direction. If they were standing still, you would essentially be just circling around them, and that's where the name comes from. You're definitely going to be playing pretty much always in a hard lock with the quad shotgun build. Ideally, you want to be as close as possible to get the most value out of your shotgun shots. A big thing that you don't want to do, though, is barrel stuffing. And barrel stuffing is basically when you get so close to the other AC that the end of your shotgun barrels are actually behind them, and so when you shoot, the shots just go behind them and they don't do anything. That's like the worst thing that can happen to the shotgun build. It's something you want to avoid completely. Another good tech to use is triangle boost. It's basically when you do an assault boost strafe into a quick boost immediately after, and it kind of throws you further, and it's like you can use it as a good movement mix-up. It's really good against lightweights. It's also really good in the quad shotgun mirror match. You can really throw someone off by doing a good triangle boost behind them and getting a guaranteed shot almost, basically.
The LAM matchup, you've got a couple options that you can do. Option one is to try to get directly underneath them and then just full send it with assault boost. Going straight up with assault boost is a lot faster than going horizontally. So you'll close the distance extremely fast, and you'll likely get the hammer to whiff also, just because how fast you're moving, and it's like such an awkward angle to come up from underneath, and you know, hammer's tracking is really wonky when it comes to vertical stuff. So you'll likely get the hammer to whiff as well, which is huge. That opens them up for some big damage. It also makes the coral missile really have a hard time tracking you as well. That's probably one of the safer options. Option two is to play a bit more of a patient game. If you're not able to get underneath them, which a good line player is probably not going to let you do that easily, you're going to have to play the long game with them. You need to be evading whatever missiles they have, as well as evading the core missile. The big thing to play around with the LAM matchup, you've got to play around the hammer and the core missile, like the two big things. You do not want the hammer to be lined up with the core missile, because that'll just completely nuke you. So you need to try to make it awkward for them to line up a hammer hit simultaneously with the core missile coming in. The way that I tend to go about playing the more patient way is I try to wait until that core missile comes out and is getting close to me, and then I'll start going up in for assault boost. That makes it the core missile is a lot more likely to mess up its tracking and probably even hit the ground. And then once you get up there, you're able to tank a lot more freely. You don't have to worry about the pro missile coming in and hitting you. It definitely becomes a lot more bearable if you space out all of their tools. You don't want to get hit by everything simultaneously, because that's how you just get bodied. Another strategy you can try doing is trying to bait out the hammer. Essentially what you're going to do is you're going to assault boost up towards them, but you're not going to go right on top of them. You're going to try to space them out, try to get them to get impatient and go in for a hammer. And if you spaced it out correctly, the hammer should miss, and then you should be able to get in some free damage. When that hammer whiffs, that is your cue to just really turn on the aggression.
If you don't eat any missiles on the way up to the land ramp, you can actually tank both whip hits.
The other strategy that you can do is go an assault boost towards them, knowing that you're going to get hit by the hammer. But once you are in that range of you where you know you're going to get hit, you can pop PA early. You won't get staggered, and you'll likely get a free decent damage off. And they usually won't pulse armor immediately with you. And if they do, then it's kind of a win for you anyway, because you have 4 shotguns, and 4 shotguns will rip through pulse armor. And that's the other thing about the reason why that strategy works is, so let's say that they do wait for your pulse armor to go before they pop theirs. The nice thing about them popping their pulse armor is that they're going to fall to the ground, and you're going to be right on top of them.
What is the visual inspiration of your AC?
So funny enough, it's still called Loader 4 because I've been lazy to it. Well, as far as like the actual design of the AC goes, color scheme, I mean, I'm a pretty simple person. I just like the way that the matte black looks, or I don't even know if it's matte black. It's pretty much all black. But then it's got like a purple arm and a red arm. And the idea behind that was I colored my shotguns 2 different colors. So like the Zims are purple and the Haldeman's are red. And it's just so that I can like visually see a bit better what I'm carrying. Because sometimes just like in the heat of everything, mixing up your shotguns is kind of a thing that can happen. And you definitely don't want that to happen in quad shotgun. You want to make sure that you always have your Zims. When your Zims are out, it's both of your Zims, and when your Haldemans are out, it's both of your Haldemans. You don't want to mix up, have one Zim and one Haldeman in each hand. So I just colored them, 2 different colors for that purpose, and purple and red being 2 of my favorite colors. And then I just wanted the AC to sort of match the guns a bit, so I just, colored one on purple and the other on red. I'm really glad that the frame that I have kind of has like a sort of sleek, futuristic look to it. Not really a fan of the more junkyard looking stuff.